We are videotaping the event, compliments of Mr. Sweeter, and we are here tonight to talk about the process of the study to the consideration of redistricting the Summers Point School District. We have hired the firm Porzio and Associates. Board of Education has set forth in terms and conditions Porzio to supply an analysis of potential outcomes to the redistricting of the Summers Point School District. Dr. Johnson, longtime educator, is here tonight as a representative of Porzio. There isn't a formal presentation. It's more of a Q&A. So when you do ask your questions, two things. You can ask the microphone, which you can see works really well if I look down here. Or you can just say it loud enough so we can hear you. Because we had a Q&A at 3 o'clock or 3:30 with the staff, and it was awesome sauce. I mean, some really good information was received, and it was very positive in regards to its tone and the sincerity of where people were coming from. You just see it's a topic people want to talk about. And really, that's where we are right now. Okay? It's a conversation to be heard. It's a conversation that we need data. And that's primarily what Porzio is going to do for us. So listen, you had enough of me before I answer the microphone. Let's turn it over to Dr. Johnson. All yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bogle. Thank you for taking the time to attend this Q&A session. Obviously, I'm not going to make a speech or give you a 20-minute presentation. I'm here really just for input for part of our study. Let me tell you just a little bit about the study to put it in perspective. The final report that we submitted to the Board of Education will be in 3 parts. The first part will be a demographic study of the district. The second part will be an educational study of the district, which is what I do. The third part will be a financial study of the district with regard to our contract with the district. That will be conducted by a certified public accountant who has many, many years of experience in education. And the demographer who will do the first part also has many years of experience in working in the area of demographics in education. As for example, he is and has been under contract to the City of New York school system for the past few years as their chief demographer. So he has a world of experience in this area. And the 3 of us complete our sections, we get together and come up with some final suggestions and recommendations for the board. So we're looking at a number of options as directed by the board. I can tell you that every option is open. Nothing has been decided or pre-decided. We will look at a number of configurations, a number of options. As a matter of fact, right now, I am currently looking at 9 different possible reconfigurations of the district. Each of them will be looked at, examined, studied, and then a decision will be made whether it's feasible educationally and financially. Now, I know with the possibility of declining enrollment, the board, as is any board, is looking for possible ways to save money. We will be looking for ways to save money as part of this study. However, under no circumstances will we be looking or will we recommend any reconfiguration concerning the saving money that will affect the educational program. Whatever savings that might come out of this study will be in regard to the educational program. Worst possible scenario, we can save some money, keep the educational level what it is. Best scenario, we come up with some ways to save money and improve the educational environment. So that's kind of where our study is coming from. It's in progress. We are at work. We don't rush our work. We want to make it as complete as possible. But at some point in the next few months, our study will be completed and we will present it to the Board of Education. Having said that, probably a little bit more than I wanted to say. I would open it up for any questions or comments at this time. And I believe we have someone that's going to be taking notes just to help me out. We had notes taken with the faculty this afternoon, and I have, by the way, I have toured all 3 buildings. I've spoken with every administrator, both building level as well as administration level. I've also spoken with representatives of the Teachers Association. And we had the open meeting for all faculty and staff this afternoon, and now this is our meeting for the public. And in case I forget to mention it later, if after you leave you think of a question, please submit it to the superintendent's office, or if you run into a friend who is not able to attend this and they have a question or a concern, please have them submit it to the superintendent's office and he will forward it to me. So I want to get as much input as possible as to how everyone, all the stakeholders in the district feel. Okay, at the expense of repeating myself, I'm not going to say anything else. Yes?
I do have a couple questions. One question is can you give us a synopsis of any of those 9 different things that you're looking at? That's one question. Have you looked at the safety aspect of doing anything?
Yes and yes. Okay, the first part, synopsis. I said I've identified 9 different ones. Let me give you some examples. Okay. One of the options, obviously, is the status quo. So the study would be to do nothing, or recommend to do nothing. By the way, as an aside, whatever is done, the Board of Education will do it. All we're doing is a study and making recommendations. We obviously can't do nothing. That's just an aside. Another option, 2 K-8 buildings. Another option would be some variations of, let's say pre-K to 4, and a 5 to 8 building, 2 buildings, pre-K to 4, 5 to 8 building, close down the New York school. When you start putting all those various configurations together, as I say, at the present time I've come up with about 9 different configurations. If I were to go strictly by what the current research shows or indicates, then the recommendation would be to tear all 3 of these buildings down and build a new K-8 to house all the students in the district. Well, guess what? That is not going to be one of the recommendations that will be made for the obvious reasons. But nothing is off the table. We're looking at a number of configurations. Some of them closing the New York school, New York Avenue School. Others keeping it open. And I'm sorry, your second.
My second question was safety.
Safety. Route 9, for example, is a major concern that will be addressed in the report in the sense that it will be fully taken into consideration. And that's about the best I can tell you at this point. I am very aware, having toured all 3 schools and toured the community, of the safety concerns of Route 9 with respect to students having to cross Route 9 or being bused or whatever the case may be. So yes, absolutely the safety, particularly Route 9, will be taken into consideration.
So that brings up another question. So you're going to be looking also in terms of busing?
Oh yes, busing, yes. Busing will be one of the key things that we'll be looking at in terms of we might come up with the best possible scenario that would cause the creation of 6 new bus runs. And it's going to cost the district more than they are now. So yes, we obviously have to look at busing, and we will be. Yes?
Right now, my children are in Further, and the most part of the class size has never gotten more than 18 kids in the class. Will that class size go up?
Class size, there is a district policy on class size, and it's my understanding that the board wants to essentially follow that policy and keep class size down. answer it this way. We're not going to come in with a recommendation that says we're going to save you this money, but you need to increase the classes to 30 students per class. That is not going to happen.
No, but you're combining two schools, now you're talking about possibly getting rid of one teacher in order to save money in combining classrooms.
Well, only if that's feasible, but not at the expense of increasing class size. When I say, you know, relatively speaking, sure, there might be, I don't know, there might be 23 students in a class as opposed to 21, but we're not going to go in with any recommendation that says you need 28 or 29 students in a classroom. I started my career teaching the 5th grade back in the dark ages, 1967, when most of you weren't born. I had 36 students. I didn't know any better. It was my first year of teaching. I thought, hey, next year, the second year was great. I only had 33 students. But those days are past. We don't have those anymore. By the way, if you're adding, that's 49 years I've been in education. I may make it one more year. I'll celebrate that. Did I answer that question for you? Yes. Yes, sir.
Is there a pre-developed criteria, and how is it weighted? Is that part of your job, or develop that? The criteria of how you're going to weigh the elements?
No, that'll be the board.
Or develops criteria?
Well, I don't know if the board will develop a criteria. We will have recommendations. For example, at the end of the study, there may be 3 scenarios that we would present to the board. Probably, although we're not at that point yet, so I can't say, probably we would rank those in order.
I guess my question is, how are they ranked? How will they be ranked? By what criteria?
By a criteria of maintaining or improving the educational program and of saving money. So you can say it's finance or curriculum or finance, however you want to put it. That would be our criteria. We don't go beyond that. And then the board will take that under consideration and do their legal obligation with regard to it. And that would be, frankly, that's going to be anything from accepting the proposals and moving on them, or simply saying, well, the board as a whole is not interested in doing any of these things. That'll be the board's, it's their legal.
That was my next question. The board is not obligated to do what you recommend?
Not at all. Not at all. These are exactly what it says. These are recommendations which the board takes under consideration and makes a decision. But obviously we give them the best recommendations that we can. Yes, miss?
What is the success rate of your firm with the board going through your recommendations? Do you know your success rate with the prior redistricting?
Well, first of all, as an aside, this is the first study that our group has done within a single district. All previous studies have been done involving multiple districts. Once we make a presentation to the board and fulfill our contractual obligations, then it's up to the board whatever they wish to do with it. And as indicated, some of the boards do nothing, others move on it. Most of our studies that we've been done have been districts who wish to get out of contractual obligations they have with other districts. As an example, short example, assume this board is not happy with Mainland Regional for whatever reason, and they want to send the children to Ocean City. That's the kind of study that we usually do. And once we finish our study, given the pros and cons, they may decide. If they decide to do that, then there's legalities and court hearings and Commissioner of Education, etc. The only success that I can tell you specifically, that we are the only consulting group that has ever successfully completed a district, inter-district reorganization. One of them was in Camden County, or Camden County Regional. It was a regional high school, and they went to a K-12 district. The other one was up in, before I started working with the group, was somewhere up in one of the northern counties. So in that sense, we've had two specific successes, and others, sometimes the board gets so involved and so costly that they, that they just simply stop the process. But I cannot give you a definitive answer other than we've been, the only law firm that's been successful in reconfiguring multiple districts. Yes?
Just for background, the reason for the redistricting, is it you said enrollment's down, is that?
The anticipation is that enrollment is going to decline. I don't have hard figures for that yet because the demographer has not completed his work, but the indications are that enrollment will decline, so the board is looking for the best way to handle that, and again, in terms of finance and curriculum, which really is their legal obligation to do in terms of what they're required to do by law and the taxpayers, taking the taxpayers into consideration. Yes?
With that, when you're looking in terms of enrollment, are you looking also in terms of, we have a transient population, and sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. It could be a month-to-month thing, it could be a year-to-year thing. It changes very quickly.
Our demographer, based upon all of his formulas, which are nationally accepted formulas, will project out a 5-year enrollment. So our decisions have to be based on that 5-year enrollment that he will come up with. And as I understand it, the formulas do take into consideration, because many of the districts in the state are transient districts. Yes, sir.
The lady partially asked what I was going to ask. So I taught 5th grade here at Poplar Avenue before doors were built. And at that time, the population was growing. And now it's contracting. But at the same time, I have no idea what the transient population is as far as percentage. Do move around, and right now students are trying to afford the park.
Understood. And again, I can only say that the demographer will handle that part, and I know that we have done many studies where there are transient populations, and he should have much more of a handle on that. And by the way, when the three of us finish each individual parts, we obviously get together with the lawyer who is in charge of this study from the law firm, and we meld everything together and come up with our recommendations. I alone will not be making the recommendations, although I'm the one mostly involved with in-district and on-the-ground concerns. Yes?
Just a little while ago, you referenced some research about, if you were to follow the research, you would recommend one school K-8. Can you speak a little bit more to that research that you have referenced? Because a lot of the research that I had looked into a few years back had said that basically any time you increase the class size, and by class size I'm not meaning classroom size, class size I'm meaning grade size.
Number of grades? You're talking about number of grades?
Not number of grades, but number of students per grade.
Yeah.
So anytime you increase that number, that's not really a positive thing, because our children become smaller fish in larger sea. So can you speak a little bit to the research that you were referencing earlier?
Well, the research I was referencing speaks to academic success with regard to an elementary school where the elementary students go on to a middle school, or those same students staying in a K-8 building. Class size was not a factor. The combining of all the 5th grades, let's say, into this building does not necessarily imply the 5th grade classes are going to be larger. They'll simply be more classes. I don't have it in my mind yet, but if there's 3 5th grades here and 3 5th grades at Dawes, then we'd be looking at 6 5th grades here.
No, I'm talking about specifically in a lot of the research, when they reference class size, they're defining class size not by how many students are in a single classroom. They're talking about how many students
Globally?
are in a full grade.
Okay. I am not aware of that specific piece of research. I can only plead ignorance, I'm not familiar with that, but I'm sure you're correct that that study may have indicated that. The last school district that I worked in public education was Winslow Township School System, which at the time was the largest K-6 district in the state. In each of our 6 buildings, we had approximately 12 classrooms of each grade. And that did not seem to be a factor any more than when I was a principal in Pennsauken. I had schools with 2 5th grades, or only 2 at each level. So there's just an awful lot of variables involved when you talk about that. Yes, sir.
I think one of those variables, and I'm wondering how much you're weighing this when you're constructing the study, is the socioeconomic status of like the towns you're doing research in. Like, what works in one town might not work in another because of the demographic. I mean, you mentioned that in the very beginning, but I guess my question is how much weight are you putting into that when you're deciding what configuration would be best? I mean, research suggests like sort of
Using the research based on our specific demographic.
I think it's highly unlikely. One of the problems is that most of the research in the class size and configuration and reconfiguration is done in places like Philadelphia and New York City and some rural districts. So in one sense, I guess in a negative sense, there's not going to be a lot of consideration taken into it because I'm not finding any research that speaks to a rather small suburban district. It may be there. I'm not finding it. Most of the research, and I will quote this in the study, some of the research, it really refers to larger districts, specifically like Philadelphia and New York, where some of this is seen. And then, of course, then we have to put that in context because this is not a Philadelphia or New York.
No, it's not. However, we do have a 70% random use rate. So
Close to it, yes.
And so
Yes.
we, while we're not identical because we are a suburban and compared to an urban, there is still much to be taken from a lot of that research.
Yes, I agree. And that specifically speaks to the fact that nothing is going to be gained by having large class sizes in a district like this. So the class sizes have to remain, I would say, within the parameters of the board policy, that being 21 in the low 20s, 21, 22, and 20. And that's the way our study is going to be looking at it. I can guarantee you that we're not going to come in with a report that calls for 27 or 28 students to a class. That is simply not going to happen because I'm going to be the one writing that aspect of the report. Now, having said that, that might very well result in the board not doing very much. It might result in saying the status quo is the best there is. I'm not going to force a change. I'm going to let the research and the study speak for itself. I don't feel an obligation that I have to come in, and I don't think my partners do either, that we have to recommend a lot of changes for change's sake. That won't happen. The results of the study will tell us what recommendations we're going to make. We're not going to make recommendations and changes just for the sake of saying, well, we did a great job, we're recommending 5 different changes. We're not going to do that. Yes, Miss?
Will any of these changes affect funding that we receive from the state or Title I funding or?
On the surface, I don't think so, but we do not get into that. That's not part of our purview because those things tend to change from year to year. The one thing that we have to do is that our study with regard to this year, next year, and the next 5 years, and we state this clearly, is done from the standpoint of no major changes being made. We have to use this year as the benchmark. And by that I mean, for example, And this has happened. There could be a change in the board in 2 years, and that board, 2 years from now, say, hey, there's nothing wrong with 26 kids to a classroom. Well, that has nothing to do with our report. That will be board-driven. Or the board may say the opposite. They may say, we only want 17 kids in a classroom, let's build 4 or 5 more classrooms onto each school. But our report must reflect this year as a baseline, and our projection will be based upon the parameters not changing and the policies not changing. So that whatever Title I funding that you're getting this year, it should continue on that same formula. Yes?
Are there any plans on bringing your project study to the public previous to bringing it to the board?
No. In fact, this is the first time that I've ever conducted a meeting of this type. Pardon?
Welcome to Summer School.
We are not required to conduct a forum like this. But I felt it was a good idea, given it's a small district, and it's, frankly, it's easy. Because when you're dealing with 3 different districts, it becomes much more difficult. And we knew there were concerns from past studies. So I said, well, let's give the, parents an opportunity to speak. And the people I answered to said, yeah, that's a good idea. Go ahead. So that's what brought this about.
And you know what, I'm not trying to put anything back on you, because this isn't what I'm saying about you. It's that, we've been through this twice already,
I understand, yes.
And for this to come up again 4 years after it just came up, 19 years after it came up before, I've been through them all, because I've been here for 22 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever it was. It's almost like, here we go again. It's very difficult.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question like that, but because it got off on a tangent. So what happens is that when our report is completed, we will notify the board, and the board will establish a date for us to make our presentation. That will be open to the public. And when we make the presentation, those of you that are present will hear the presentation. You'll be able to take notes, and you will hear the recommendations and results. Now, whether you will have a copy of the report available for you to take home that night, I can't say. But if you don't have a copy of the report available that night to take home, you will have one available, I would say, within a week. But no, there will not be another meeting of this sort before it goes to the board. As a matter of fact, as it turns out, this will be the last meeting this time, because I've met with the administrators, I met with the faculty, met with the Teachers Association representatives, met with the people in the central office. All of the faculty and staff, all the faculty had an opportunity to come by this afternoon, and now this is the opportunity for the public to come forward. But this, there will never say never. As far as I know, this will be the last meeting with the public.
Is this public considered the parents or the city? So we notify the student families, but nobody in town knows, the taxpayers.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay, I would say,
Don't know.
so this is our meeting for the student families, but there's like 10,500 other people in town.
Well,
Or like 11, like 9,000 other people. I don't know how all this works.
okay.
But
Well,
there are other people that
let me
are
just
affected.
let me just make a comment. I live in Berlin, which is a 45-minute drive. I will personally have no problem coming down here on another evening if there was a substantial number of, quote, the stakeholders who
Right.
do not have the children in the school. If they want to have a meeting such as this,
I don't know.
any excuse to get out of the house at night. I'm sorry,
Sometimes-
I said that.
That's fine.
I'll tell my wife I said that.
The stakeholders, exactly what you said, people that have,
There they are. Oh, very important.
when you have a healthy school district, the rest of the town benefits.
Oh, yes, yes. And they're very much stakeholders because they're taxpayers. Yes.
I have something.
Yes.
I'm one of those stakeholders. My children have been through this district and we've been through this redistricting again. I think what's happened over the years, we have not done that for fear of stepping on toes or making, waves or doing something. We have not considered the totality of our district. We're less than 5 square miles. We have less than, we have roughly somebody in administration, we have like 900-ish students, somewhere around there. We're talking about 900 students that are in this school. We are a divided community and we're only less than 5 miles. We have to stop thinking about our own selves and think about the betterment of a community and not that, not just our own little thing. We have 2 mascots in this town. We have the Dolphins and we have the Jordan Road Jaguars. We don't even have, this came up in that, what was that? The strategic planning. And every group, we had like 8 groups in the strategic planning meetings that we had of community leaders and things like that. This is affecting these 900 students, and there may be, 30 people here out of 900 students? Not all of us have 10 kids in each
How many
class.
languages was it sent out in?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
That's not my bailiwick. And that's something that needs to be addressed somewhere else. That came up in the strategic planning as well, that we needed bilingual everything to make sure that the people know what's going on and when it's going on. My guess is because seeing for years, remember my kids are one's graduating high school and the other is in college. So I've been around this, show for a long time, as Kathy has been. You've been longer than I have. We tend to make it a bigger deal than it is. If we had done this when my child was in, because we started it in kindergarten. He was in kindergarten, he's in college now. If we had started it, we would have been a whole community at that point. By now, we would have, we just sometimes have to bite the bullet and do what we need to do for what the betterment of the community is. And when I lived in a community that was bigger than this, and we still had one school that we went to for elementary, and then we went somewhere else. If it's a busing issue or a transportation issue, then that needs to be talked about and discussed. If you're afraid for your child, when they're in 7th and 8th grade, they walk across Route 9. If you drive down Route 9 at any point during the summer, you see these kids walking up and down the streets, you see them crossing highways, so they don't have any problem in the summer. It seems that only when they're going to school does it become an issue that they need to be bused. And I just think as a whole, we need to just think outside the box, think about our small size, think about the continuity and the everything that we have here, and not dividing our community. I think we need to, I talked about the amount of people that were here, but I think I heard in some of your conversations where you're worried about the class size. And that's something that needs to be addressed for the administration part of it. If you think that you're going to cut jobs, meaning if right now we have 6 fifth-grade classrooms, and you think, okay, well now we can squish more kids in a classroom and have 5 teachers that we're paying, that's not really helping the situation. Because you gave the thing of being 5 classrooms. If we have 9, I'm just using the pre-K, we have roughly 90 students over there. 5 classes is 18 in a classroom. And as some of you know, that's far too many in some of those classrooms. If we had 120 in a class grade, which is what you're talking about, the grade, not the classroom size, and we have 6 classes, that's 20 students. There are classes that have more than 20 students in them right now, and nobody's complaining about that. Nobody's saying anything about that. So if that's an issue, then you needed to let your administration know that over the last few years. Not right now when they're talking about redistricting, which might be good. I'm not saying it would be. I'm saying it might be good for the community. I think we just need to look outside the box. Also keep in mind that if they were to do this plan, what we say at home directly affects everything that happens in this school district. If you are bad-mouthing the program and if they decide to make I don't know, Plan X. What you say at home comes to school and is repeated by those students. You know, and no matter what we say, so if you have a bad attitude about testing, if you have a bad attitude about any of those things, then you need to think about what you're saying and how you're saying it and how the child that you have is listening to what you're saying. Because there's so many kids that are opting out of testing that it's important for them to take these tests. I'm 60, I'm 62.
We're not going on the test right now, are we?
No,
Because that
no,
would be a
no,
whole
we're
can
not,
of
no,
worms
no.
that I'm going to flip out on.
No,
so
no,
let's not do that.
okay. But we're, you know, just the whole overall thing, I'm just saying it as an example, because that's something
Yeah, but
that's
you're-
just come up.
You're
in the
making
last
us look
month.
territorial. I don't think that any of us are looking at this territorially again. Or if we did many, many years ago, 19 years ago, maybe we did that. I don't know. I'm not looking at it territorial. Obviously, I have a son in Jordan Road. I don't have any more kids in the district coming up. You know, I take offense to that you're making it look like we're doing that, and I don't believe that we are. I think that we're looking at the educational benefit of our children. I think that we're looking at the safety factor of our children, and I think we're seriously concerned parents here who have talked about it over and over and over again until we're blue in the face about this redistricting thing. I really do. And those are my points. You know, the educational benefit, the safety benefit of our kids. You know, these are our kids. This is our community. And like you said, yes, we are one community. So let's talk in terms of just making it Summers Point District. Maybe not Jordan Road, Dawes Avenue, Dolphins and Jags, whatever. That's a whole different point. This is not that, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, let me just make one comment. If it is requested by the superintendent and/or in consultation with the board that they would like to have another meeting of this type that is specifically directed to the parents, I will be happy to come down. Yes.
I have a question. 6 years ago, I tried to do some research on redistricting plans to understand what they're like. I really didn't find much success. Is there something that I could Google, or could you share a link of an example of a plan per se that you've done for another district? So I understand what is forthcoming. I know it won't be the same, but just the guts of it.
She walked in a little bit late, so she missed that first example.
I
that you
apologize.
gave. That first example you gave
In a
of,
day. Okay,
Yeah, you
so I
can,
can get that information and, yeah.
you can simply, Google, class, school reconfiguration or anything of that nature.
Okay. I haven't done it since.
One of the first comments I made was the current research indicates that a K-5 building is in general the best way. Now, if you do research back 20 years ago and pick some of the older research, it's going to say the middle school is better. That has been changing. However, one of the options we're looking at is 2 K-8s. Well, I'm not sure 2 K-8s will work in this district, but that's one thing that we will look at, just again as an example. Any configuration that's possible is on the table and it's going to be looked at. Anything else? Oh, if I didn't mention this before, let me mention it again. Any thoughts that come up after this meeting? You want to send any suggestions to the superintendent, please do so. And please tell your neighbors if they do not have children in school and they are not aware of this, if they wish to send any comments to the superintendent, he will forward them to me. Yes.
You said you can't look out 5 years. You're looking at this year's numbers.
This year's numbers and the next 5 years' numbers.
Okay.
What happens in an instance where Jordan Road had the mold problem a few years back? And that was costly to the education system. Would it be trustworthy to, if something like that happened again, if we just rebuild it in another school? Or, I mean,
That's my question. I apologize for walking in late, Maggie. Facilities, the building, the structure.
Yes.
Because I'm ignorant as to these presentations.
Because this building is quite old. It's So,
No, we have not been charged with the board to look at facilities with regard to expansion or changing. I'm not going to look at that. I'm looking at the existing buildings.
so that's not going to be taken into account at all?
We can't take into account 3 years from now, mold might be discovered in Dawes School.
It is, it's already
There's-
there.
Well, there's no way we can take that into consideration as far as the study is concerned. We really can't take that into consideration because we have no idea what that would cost, no idea what the ramifications are, no idea of how the time factor. Our charge is that the existing schools, with the only change being made in terms of the schools, is we'll be looking at the possibility or the feasibility of closing the New York Avenue School, the pre-K, and bringing those students into either building. We will look at that. We'll also, and that's not a foregone conclusion, that building is there, it belongs to the board, and closing it, creates a new set of financial problems for the board. So that's not a given by any means that will close, but we will look at that. Yes?
This is not a question.
It's a comment?
Say to be, yes, directed at you, but just an additional point to consider.
Please.
No offense to our superintendent, current superintendent right now, but our superintendents have been a revolving door for the last few years.
As in many
So
districts,
a
unfortunately.
very important point to consider would be that any reconfiguration whatsoever that would occur, we would be relying on a brand-new superintendent to implement that, and trusting that that person who has not proven him or herself yet to follow through and do that in the most efficient, effective, and in the best interest of our students. And that is, quite frankly, extremely scary.
That's
Okay.
aggressive, right.
Extremely
Very
scary.
aggressive.
Okay, well, first of all, the only way the existing superintendent or a new superintendent is going to implement anything in our report is going to be at the direction and the supervision of the Board of Education. Now, the new superintendent may say, oh, I don't really think I want to do this. And the board, and I was a board member for 14 years, along with probably some of the rest of you, said, well, Miss or Mrs. Superintendent, that's really unfortunate, but that's our direction to you. You're going to have to do it. And we really hope you do it well, because if you don't, that's unsaid. So it's not going to be up to the new superintendent as to how effectively it's implemented. It's going to be up to the board whether or not they direct the new superintendent to implement it or not to implement it. And that's simply a case of state law. Now, I don't know how else to answer that. Now, can you get a superintendent that's less competent than the one you have now? Yes.
Yes.
Could you get one more competent? No, not a shot. It's because it's here.
Thanks.
He wrote that down for me to say, really.
Right,
Yes.
To sound dense, you gotta forgive me, our report, our study that we are receiving will be based upon curriculum and
Financial.
educational, financial aspects, not facilities. I'm not getting any information about logistics, transportation, and
Oh,
facilities.
transportation, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, because that
I
is
mean,
a
when you say
huge part of the
facility, we're
puzzle.
talking about expanding a building or tearing a building down or something like
No
that. No, that's not going to be in
Okay.
it. But, transportation will be a major part of this because of Route 9 and simply because of some changes in busing. Yes,
And then the demographics will support that.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
The three sections, the demographics, the
Education.
financial, the education, who is going to conduct the study on the safety? Which section will that be in? that'll be indoors.
Yes, well, the finance element will be, the busing will be done, the transportation will be done with myself and the finance person together. Because there's certain financial things that he'll do that I will not be doing, but he and I will be sharing information so that he can get his part done. I'm doing some of the legwork for him now. See a hand?
When you discuss safety, not just safety outside of the school, you would use the example of Route 9, but safety within the school as well, correct?
Safety within the school.
As far as having older children with younger children,
Well, I really hadn't thought about it in that regard, other than the fact that if you, right now, you have K-8 in one building, you have K-6 in another building. A lot of the options that we have would be, for example, a K-4 building and a 5-8 building. Then you would not have that particular concern. So, yeah, that would be part of the study in that regard. Yeah, my homeschool district is, we have about 700 students, and we have one K-8 building for the entire district. But that one building has a distinct separate 6, 7, and 8 section, so that the 7th graders are not walking down this hallway and the 2nd graders walking up that hallway.
or using the same bathrooms, that was my...
Or separate, yeah, separate facilities, yes. So that, yes, that would be part, but I don't see it as a major of the study. Yes.
Some of your safety things, are you going to be speaking to our local police department in reference to motor vehicle accidents, pedestrian motor vehicle accidents, things like that via Route 9?
No,
Some
we're
of the
not.
places that they're going to be crossing?
We just recognize that Route 9 is a major artery, and that there should be crossing guards at certain key points. But no, it is not my plan to speak with the police department this time. Because if one of the recommendations is implemented, then the Board of Education or the superintendent through the Board of Education would be speaking with the police department in that regard, whichever plan might be accepted or be accepted by the board.
If you don't go the route of bus, hire bus, now you have all these students coming to one school, drop off, pick up this, and
Okay, good point. Thank you. Make a point of that. Good, thank you.
12 grades.
I am not wild about the idea of having students at the 4th and 5th grade level crossing Route 9, even with a crossing guard. That might come to pass someday, and it does in other towns. I'm personally not wild about that idea. I would rather see the bust, even though that might negate some of the savings. But that's getting ahead of myself. Yes?
You're talking about Route 9 as an obvious safety issue. You're looking at other streets where kids currently cross, because we have Short Road and Laurel Drive, which are just as busy as Route 9, that kids are currently crossing. And those two roads don't have streetlights on it with pedestrian walkways. So are you looking at that as well when you're talking about the safety issue of Route 9?
I want to be looking at primarily busing as many students as reasonably possible financially. That's what I will be primarily looking at. I really will not be looking at every cross-section. But I'm also getting a lot of very good input from the business administrator's office as well as superintendent's office with regard to transportation, which is a major concern in this district. And the safety, and because of the traffic, as it is in all districts, but it does seem to be with Route 9 particularly, and Shore Road, that there's a lot of concern about safety.
Bethel and Groveland, where the kids cross from where they live, near the ball fields, coming to Dawes. It's
Yeah,
a
the laws
challenge
in New
to-
Jersey are maybe less than ideal because crossing guards are the responsibility of the municipality. And they're paid by the municipality. They're not the responsibility of the school district. The school district can only ask for, but it's the municipality that assigns the crossing guards. Okay, well, yeah.
With regard to the internal safety question, do you look at the social aspect, the HIB reports, the bullying?
No, that's an internal administrative
Because when you
concern.
combine ages.
That's not within our
Okay.
purview, as I see it at this time, unless something surfaces.
Do we know how much enrollment is projected to decline, or have you seen?
I have not seen the demographer's figures yet, but there's other indications that the board and superintendent have that would seem to make it very probable that there's going to be a decline, and that's one of the reasons they initiated this study. But I have not seen hard figures yet.
And that's just through Atlantic County?
It's the whole county. It's economically driven, and it's particular to this county for the obvious reasons up the road.
And can you reiterate again the timing? So you're gathering research, it sounds like you've done a lot of research already, and then the time frame from once you hit your...
From the three of us completing our work, and just as an aside, that is probably pretty obvious, I do a little bit of part-time consulting, as this is my only project right now, so I can devote quite a bit of time to it. My two partners both still work full-time, and they do have other chestnuts in the fire. But once they start on their sections, it'll be completed fairly quickly. I'm reluctant to give you even an estimate of when it will be completed, but if I can go out on a limb, and if you won't hold me to it, I'll be very surprised if it's not finished sometime along about the end of July. I'll personally be a little disappointed if it's not. So you come back to me in October and say you're really disappointed, aren't you? See, that's not going to happen. It'll be finished the board expects it in a reasonable amount of time, and they will get it in a reasonable amount of time. It's just that I can work faster because I'm not doing a lot else.
And then the board would be looking to implement any changes. What are they looking like 2 years from now, or?
Well, as I told the group this afternoon, the very earliest anything can be implemented will be September of 2017. And then we usually recommend changes on a grade-to-grade basis. The board can do whatever it wishes, but most changes of this nature would be, for example, if this were to become a 6, 7, 8 building, the 6th grade would be affected first, the next year the 7th grade, and the following year the 8th grade. That type of rolling changes instead of one big change. Now, a couple of people this afternoon said, no, you should. And this would have to be a parent or teacher in the school said, I think this should be all 3 grades done at one time. Well, that might be best, I don't know. But that's not what we usually recommend. But again, based upon your specific concerns, meaning the board and everybody's, the board may say, well, we're going to change 2 grades, or we're going to change 3, or we're going to wait a year before we change the first one. Once we make our recommendation.
Did your firm work with Greater Egg Harbor Regional School District to develop Cedar Creek? Do you know that?
Greater,
Read about that, or
Greater Egg Harbor Regional, no.
the Cedar Creek High School where they created that? I was just asking.
I don't think so. We worked in Sea Isle City. I did some work there a few years ago. And I'm trying to think of any, Pineland Regional, where they were having all the problems, and Southern Regional with all of the barrier out. We did a lot of work out there.
Thank you.
Greater Egg Harbor does not come to mind. Now, we have other consultants. Besides myself, there's educational people who work on other projects and I don't get involved with. Well, I'm going to say thank you right now. There may be some of you that kind of need to leave because of children at home or whatever. I'll be here until the last person leaves, and I did see one hand. You want to ask one more question for the group, please?
You might have answered my question already, but your recommendation, include an implementation plan, or you'll leave that?
Oh, yes, no. We will include a kind of a boilerplate recommendation based upon our past studies. The board will take that under consideration, and then they will make a decision on what they think is best. Yes.
I don't know, you can't answer this. Is there a committee for the reconfiguration with the board? Is there a group of people? It's the full board working on the project, not a subcommittee? Okay, thank you.
Well, Dr. Johnson, I'm going to be the first to thank you for your marathon at Q&A. In addition, thank you for everyone for coming tonight. I got a sense from the question that we want to be a second meeting. Before you tonight, we want to have a second meeting. It's just a Q&A.
Oh, just a Q&A. I mean, there's no additional data. Please tell me now. For a second meeting, hey Frank, I'm going to come to a second meeting, just one. Okay.
I don't have a lot of different answers.
Well, hey, that's a good idea, right? Plant people in the second meeting, ask any questions. No, but, okay, so I'll consider that. I thought the word got out, it's on our webpage, discussing board meetings and things like that. So it kind of is what it is, other than taking out an ad to paper, I don't know how else further we can publish. With that being said, again, Dr. Johnson, thank you very much. Much appreciated for your ladies and gentlemen, so if you leave this room and you go, oh my goodness, why didn't I answer that question or ask that question? Just send it to me. All I'm going to do is get forward to Dr. Johnson. I might be able to provide that answer after consultation with Virgil. But this is a process. This is just the start of the ball. And really, the data you're going to get from this is that you're going to be able to sit back then and go, so what do we want to do? And by the way, you can tell just from the questions in the room, the sincerity, maybe even a little bit of the anxiety that exists about the potential is here. It's live. I think there's value in that. There's value in the study, and there's certainly value in having good conversations like this. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. You guys take care.
Right. This is more,